Hello and welcome to the Championship Talk podcast. I'm your host Paul O'Toole, and not joined with me again today is my co-host Thomas Falco. He unfortunately has work commitments, but will be with us next week when we look at the end of season rundown and preview the playoffs, which are going to come pretty quickly. We're going to start with, I think we've got to start with something that didn't happen in our league. It was the storming of Old Trafford by protesters, angry at the European Super League, angry at the running of their club. I kind of didn't want to let that pass before having my say. I know Thomas will probably have a say in this. We've seen other clubs protest their owners. Charlton did the famous throwing tennis balls onto the pitch. We've seen fans boycott games. We've seen games with less than a couple hundred people in pre-COVID. And I just think those fan protests have equal weight as what's happened at Old Trafford. I don't like seeing the things that happened at Old Trafford. I don't think that's the right way to protest. I don't think that gets anywhere. And I don't think that will get anyone what they ultimately want. If anything, it can make the owners more entrenched. So yeah, I didn't want to let that pass because I think that was quite a sad thing to happen. The game between Man United and Liverpool was postponed. Not that I care because I watch the Championship, but it would set a bad precedent if fans were looking to protest against the running of a football club, and that's seen as a correct way to go about it. Hopefully that most of the listeners to the podcast will see that clearly isn't the way to go about protesting, and actually some of the protests that have happened even in this league against owners, they can be quite inventive and have quite as bigger impact. Now, obviously, the reason that the Manchester United protesters had so much of it had so much impact. It was game was live on Sky. They had the commentators in the ground, obviously, and because of the profile of the club. Now, the club's in the Premier League, it's going to get a better coverage than the club in the Championship, and then even less in League One, League Two. So obviously, you've seen a lot about it. But that's definitely not the way to go if you are looking to protest against the ownership of a club. Just kind of wanted to sort of start with that. We're going to talk about the teams that are joining us. So Hull City, as I said last week, are going to be joining us. They are, a top of League One, fantastic. Played 45, Goldham's plus 43, and points 89. Joining them are Peterborough United, played 45, Goldham's plus 40, Goldham's plus 34, 84 points. Really good to see Peterborough United back in this league. I think they're going to be a great addition. It's good to see new teams in this league that add to the drama, and it's going to be great if there's fans in the stadium, as we're looking like it will be. That's going to be great to see Peterborough United hosting teams such as some of the teams that we've got in our league are just huge, and Cardiff's, a couple of teams that are not going to make the playoffs are, you look at the four teams in the playoffs are going to be huge. Bournemouth, Brentford, Swansea. Only one of those is going to go up, and it's going to be great seeing games at Peterborough because I think their stadium's just got so much character to it. The teams that could also be joining us: Blackpool, Sunderland, Lincoln, and Portsmouth. When you look at three of those teams have spent a real good chunk of their last 10 years in the Premier League. Oxford United could still pit Portsmouth to that last playoff place. So it'll be interesting to see out of those four teams. Personally, I want Lincoln to come up. I think that would be great to have Lincoln in our league. But obviously, when you look at teams like Sunderland and Portsmouth and Blackpool, huge clubs, hugely well supportive, could be a great asset to the league. So, going to be interesting following the playoffs at League One level. Obviously, we are looking at the playoffs, and I think all the games across League One, League Two, and the Championship are going to be great games. So, looking forward to that. I want to draw everyone's attention to an article that was in The Athletic, a really, really good, well-written article. And it's about Preston challenging the EFL over the £117.5 million MetLife loan. And they are worried about the impact on reckless spending and clubs that are going to push for the dream of being in the Premier League and all the riches that comes with. I'm with Preston on this. I think when you look across, whether it be the financial sector, whether it be the building trade, or even especially football, when the rewards are huge and to the sums of money we're talking about, the risks you take to achieve those rewards are bigger. If the rewards aren't as huge, the risks you take are less. And I'm going to try and articulate an example of that. In the financial world, if you're going to buy shares that are going to return you 10 pence in dividend over a year, and you're going to risk £10,000 to get that 10 pence in dividends, but those shares could go backwards and you could lose the whole lot, you're not going to take that risk, or you're going to be very cautious as to take that risk. If those shares could get you £1 million in dividends, but there's the same chance you could lose that £10,000, you're going to take that risk, and there's the same chance you could win that. This is where this has come from. When we're talking about the risk of a club's future finances compared to the benefit of a club's future finances if they make it into the Premier League, Preston make a really good argument that clubs at all levels in the EFL could potentially push towards that freedom of the Premier League and all the riches and the hundreds of millions of pounds that come in TV deal. But what happens if you default and you don't, and you can't make the payments? This could end up with clubs being docked points. It could end up with clubs eventually going out of business. And Preston make a really, really valid argument in my view. And I don't necessarily see that there's going to be any objection. Clubs are not going to say no, we don't want this money. It's going to be an interesting story. It'll be interesting to see how it develops. At the end of the day, it could be a non-starter when you think that clubs are potentially going to have fans back in the stadiums as early as September, and that's going to make a huge difference to some of these clubs. And some of these clubs' debt levels will have swollen because of COVID and because of the lack of revenue. The clubs with the biggest expenses, obviously, in terms of player wages, player recruitment, fees owed, etc., are going to have felt that more. Clubs that have been more frugal in how they run, have a business model where they sell players every year to maintain that a debt level that's almost non-existent. They were going to find the pinch a lot easier. So we're going to be interested to see how that runs, because I think that does tie in quite well with the Super League and some of the big clubs looking at their revenue streams and worrying about their debt levels. When you talk about some of the revenues that the big clubs have, they're huge. Take away gate receipts, and that's a massive impact for 70, 80,000 seater stadiums that have been sitting empty. You don't have the advantage over a Rotherham that holds 10,000 spectators as you do Old Trafford that's in the upwards of 80,000. It's a level playing field there, and it's per match day receipts. That's been a great leveler. Difference is Rotherham are paying far less in wages than, say, Manchester United. So it's going to be interesting to look at that. Obviously, we had the social media blackout over the weekend. I definitely approve of that kind of response to anti-abuse online and anti-racism online. Do I think that this one blackout helps? No, I think they should have just gone, right, we're not posting anything to the end of the season. I think they should have just blanket banned. It was good to see BT Sport were getting involved as well. Because I think I said that if the coverage of the games wasn't on the social media platforms, then that would have an impact. And when you look at some of the stuff that was trending, it was less. Simple as that. There was less football being trended on social media. However, would it have an effect, and did we expect it to have the effect that we wanted? No. Stoke, Loney Rabi Mantondo, he's received racist abuse on Instagram. And he posted, good to see the boycott changed nothing. Facebook, which owns Instagram, have removed the accounts and have promised new tools to help prevent people from sending abusive messages to strangers. I get what they mean, but you shouldn't be sending abuse to anyone. But anyway, I get what they mean. Some sort of friend request system in place. I get what they mean, but they're almost making themselves. They're almost tying themselves in knots by trying to be seen to do the right thing. Sky Sports also joined the wider sporting community in taking part in the 4-day social media boycott against discrimination. And again, it took the way. I think BT Sport, Sky Sports. It was a good thing that they supported this and didn't have their coverage on these platforms. And I think that if they'd have said, right, okay, to the end of the season, we're not going to do it. 4 days. Does anyone notice 4 days in a football season? No. Would you notice that the running and the run into the end of the season, the playoffs, not on social media? That would have a massive effect on the social media platforms, and I think that would really push change. But I definitely think that more of that more blackouts would definitely be something that would be beneficial. And the last thing I want to talk about again, and this is something that quite soured me a little bit. Todd Kane, QPR defender, has been charged by the FA by using abusive language. The QPR defender Todd Kane has been charged with a breach of Football Association rules. It's alleged, and I say the word alleged, the 27-year-old right-back used abusive and or insulted language which included reference to nationality or ethnicity. The incident occurred in the 62nd minute of QPR's 2-1 win against Brentford in the Championship on the 17th of February. When you look at what we're trying to achieve, again, this is alleged. If this turns out to be true, it really does it leaves a sour taste in the mouth that a player would feel that's appropriate. And I hope that the allegations are not true. I would hope that no footballer, with all that's going around sport at the moment, wouldn't think it's acceptable to use any language like that. However, you kind of think, social media blackouts and things like that need footballers to be those shining examples of they need to be the fight of inequality. And I think that's going to be very interesting. We had incidents all through doing this pod of on the fields language being used, and I'm not going to name incidences, but where players were found guilty of using racist language, and if footballers themselves are being seen to be doing this, Joe Numpty on the street is going to feel it's acceptable to do on social media. And I think that footballers need to be that, that example of, no, we don't do this, we take a stand against this. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, because I think, as I say, there are only allegations at the moment. Obviously, there'll be a hearing and etc. So we will follow that story. So thank you all for listening. As always, head over to the main podcast to get a deep dive into all the games that happened this week and to look at the final round of fixtures that are coming up, because there are some amazing fixtures coming up this weekend, some massive implications at the bottom, and we'll be going through those in the main part of the podcast. So as always, if you like the podcast, leave us a like, hit the subscribe button so you get the notifications. You know how this works. And if there's anything you want us to talk about in the news, myself and Thomas next week, do leave us a comment down below, because we will listen to feedback and we will want to talk about subjects. If there's anything you think we've missed, then leave us a link to the local newspaper press article that you've seen it, because that can sometimes be a really, really helpful for us, because there's so much noise around the Premier League and all that other stuff that the local press tend to get drowned out. And some of the stories that go on in your local clubs, some of the work that clubs do is quite phenomenal. So we'd really like to see that. So, as always, speak to you next week. Bye, everyone.